Your four favorites are Mulholland Drive, Mirror, Latin, and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. You have two David Lynch films in your favorites, but you didn't have The Straight Story or Wild at Heart marked as watch. But it feels like cheating if I recommend those because I'm sure you're planning on checking those out eventually. I want to start off by recommending some movies that came out this year that you haven't seen yet, because identity is an important theme in Mulholland Drive, and we got two great films about identity this year, The Substance and A Different Man. And I Saw the TV Glow kind of reminds me of Twin Peaks, but that could just be because the way the characters obsess over a fictional TV show in that movie is how I obsess over Twin Peaks. But moving on, my top choice for you is The Hourglass Sanatorium. It's surreal like Mulholland Drive and Fire Walk with Me, and like Mirror, it was released in the mid-70s and depicts a person reflecting on their relationship with one of their parents. And now I'm realizing when I logged this on Letterboxd, I said it was like if Andrei Tarkovsky directed Inland Empire. So I guess it makes sense that it's my top choice for someone with two David Lynch movies and a Tarkovsky movie in their four favorites. Another one of my top choices for you is Black Girl. I almost wasn't going to include this one because I feel like I can't articulate why it came to mind when I looked at your favorites, but it feels right and I'm going to trust my intuition on this one. Maybe it's because it could be considered part of the woman in trouble genre like Mulholland Drive and Fire Walk with Me, or because you use the word tragic in reviews for a couple of your favorites, or because like La Haine, it depicts racism in France and has stunning black and white cinematography. Speaking of stunning black and white cinematography, last year at Marienbad is another one of my top choices for you. This one came to mind because you've got some surreal, experimental, avant-garde, and psychological films in your favorites. I've seen quite a few people complain that this movie makes no sense, but you seem like the type of person who would sit with it and form a meaningful interpretation. Plus, David Lynch and some of your other favorite filmmakers definitely drew some inspiration from this film. Another movie that has stunning black and white cinematography that falls into the woman in trouble genre that I mentioned earlier is Pandora's Box, but this one came out in 1929, so the black and white aspect of it wasn't exactly a stylistic choice. In some ways, the protagonist in this one kind of reminds me of Laura Palmer, and it has a lesbian subplot like Mulholland Drive. I always recommend Three Women to fans of Mulholland Drive because it's a psychological film that depicts two women whose identities sort of become entangled, but a couple other movies that are surreal, experimental, or avant-garde that revolve around two women that I think you should check out are Daisies and Celine and Julie Go Boating. The Double Life of Veronique is one of my go-to recommendations for people who love Mulholland Drive. Carnival of Souls, like Mulholland Drive, starts off with a woman who can't remember anything after a car accident. Since you like Mirror, I think you might like The Tree of Life. But this is another one like The Hourglass Sanatorium where someone is reflecting on their relationship with their father. But since Mirror is about a mother-son relationship and you explore that in your most recent review of it, I want to recommend a couple movies about mother-son relationships, even if they're very different in style and tone compared to Mirror. So I think you should check out Mommy and All About My Mother. Since Mirror is about a dying poet looking back on his memories, and the film itself feels poetic in nature and has an unconventional structure, I think you might also like The Color of Pomegranates. La Haine deals with racism and police brutality, so I think you should check out Blind Spotting and Boys in the Hood. Christiana F., like Fire Walk with Me, depicts a teenage girl who gets involved with drugs, and David Bowie is there. Fire Walk with Me has come up in quite a few of these videos, so I'm going to quickly list off some of my recommendations for this one to avoid being too repetitive. The Piano Teacher, Belle de Jour, Lilia Forever, Repulsion, and Star 80. And just to switch it up a little bit, a movie I haven't recommended in a video yet that I think you'd like since you like Fire Walk with Me is Looking for Mr. Goodbar.